Okay. Oh man, it's so excited to. So actually, you can see my screen, I guess now.
Yes, we can.
So I'm gonna go with slides. I think I'm gonna go the same slides I did, but it was in other session. So I think it's because of audience. I'm just gonna quickly go, and then I will go to the DevOps in action part. So simply, not too much to talk. We are here. I'm Sako, currently working as a DevOps engineer in OpenGov company based in Redwood, San Francisco Bay Area in US. And I'm also founder, kind of maintainer, two open source projects. One is Go, one is JobX. And in the past, I worked in Germany, France, and etc. and Nginx, Fraunhofer, and so on. So this is me, in case you can connect me over LinkedIn. And here is OpenGov, briefly, my current company and the current role, what I'm doing. And it's leader enterprise cloud solution for the government entities. It's powering more effective accountable government. It's more like selling the financial solution for the entities. So it's like cloud for government. And I really like the mission of the company, and we say what we do what we say we do. We drive for customer impact. We have passion for mission, and culture is smart, fun, humble. So yeah, that's briefly about company. So let's start from the software development. Software development, it's not about just writing the code. It starts before writing the code, and it doesn't end after writing the code. So first, you need to understand really all the requirements, and here it helps you to talk to stakeholder analysis, some business people, get all the as much input you can, because from the project to customer, project to project, there are a lot of variables changing. So if it works for one project, it doesn't mean that it will work for others. So you have to really first get as much as inputs you can, and then you go to design phase. It means you talk to architect, you make your research in the market, you talk to other companies, etc. And then once you finalize and review the design, you go to the development, which is writing the code part. And then obviously you do testing. Testing has verification and validation. And verification means it works as expected. And validation means it's the one what the customer asked it for. So verification and validation is the testing phases. And the maintenance, it comes after the project goes to the production. So, and yeah, 10, 12. Okay, Nabi, in case the time, just please let me know if I go over. Yeah, where lands DevOps in that execution, as I was explaining previously, it's really important that, and it falls into non-functional requirement of application. Functional means, for example, user can go to their shopping basket, or they can do some shopping, or different kind of functionality. But non-functionality means, is it, what's availability requirements, SLAs? What are the scalability requirements? What are the security requirements? All these going to the non-functional requirement that customer usually doesn't care much. Then comes the prototyping, like you do the POC, review, roadmap, actual development, and then deployment, where again the DevOps comes and the maintenance part. That's more like SRE part. More than DevOps, it's SRE and a bit of DevOps if you want to do some evaluation over time, if you want upgrades, etc. And yeah. So where lands DevOps in organization? If you see like simple organization chart, you have engineering ops, DevOps, and you have architecture, quality, which is usually different. Application like front-end, back-end developers are landing here. Data platform, this team usually are responsible for the data pipeline, like databases and any flow of the data, and like database schema, etc. And then you have product team, product manager, which usually you frequently talk regarding the features you want to build, and the program management, who controls all the project. So, and what's DevOps? DevOps is combination of development and operation. And previously, as you know, there was 2 different teams or departments, and every 6 months there was a release, and they were coming together and they were fighting, etc. And then DevOps came as a culture. It means you ship the code you developed. So it means both in once. And in long term, security, performance, scalability, availability, reliability, and maintainability, all these are the responsibilities of the DevOps team. And roles of DevOps, developer experience, we call it. It's CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery pipeline, and SRE for the tooling part, security architect, creating, and that's the main roles inside the DevOps team. If you have 5 these competent in the team, probably your cluster or your application will be stable. If not, you may have some challenges. And sorry, I think I'm gonna open the chat meanwhile. Okay.
No, continue.
Okay, just let me know in case. First thing, Git is must, as you know, also all the go-up, all the documentation, all the tooling and everything we put heavily in Git, and Git is really must for nowadays for any kind of engineer starting their career. The first thing they have to learn. It's distributed version control system, and it's collaborative development for the shared code, multiple copies in local and remote, and reverse changes, etc., and track what changes and when. So that's Git you must know, basically. And the Docker comes, which make the boom recently after a while after the virtual machines came. And this was really challenging before the Docker because the developer was running code in the machine, but it wasn't able to run in the production because of different environment, etc. And it was taking, basically every release was taking at least 3 to 6 months. So Docker means that you can still develop the code and the same library and the same dependency you can ship with the application code, and it will run the same way as in your developer laptop and in the production environment. So Docker is one of the things you must know. It's for building and shipping the images, the code, but it's not for the running. And Jenkins is one of the tools. I just put the Jenkins as continuous integration tool, which we are using, which is mainly for the complex project. But if you have some simple application or simple use case, you can use, I would say, GitHub Actions or any Circle CI, any other tooling. But if you have complex pipelines, go for Jenkins. It has a bigger community. It has it's cross-platform, as you can see, and a lot of plugins installed. But the downside is you have to maintain the Jenkins yourself if you want to use the Jenkins. I'm not sure if there is a SaaS version for the Jenkins, but if not, yeah, it takes a lot of effort. It falls for the DevOps team to maintain this application as well. So. And Spinnaker is another great open source tool by Google, which was open source. Spinnaker is for the continuous deployment. Once you build the image, you test it using the Jenkins, and you created the Docker image, and then you can use Spinnaker to deploy it into production. So you can use Jenkins as well to deploy to production, but Spinnaker gives you more flexibility, more options. Blue-green, canary strategy, rollback, and so on. So if you have a bigger production cluster, go for Spinnaker. Yeah. And infrastructure, Kubernetes, I think that's definitely one of the key tech pieces nowadays. You have to know that most of the production network, they start moving to cloud, and the second thing they do, they are starting moving their application, containerize their application and use Kubernetes, because it takes so much hassle, and it makes so much faster the development of the application. So Kubernetes is open source platform, is again developed by the Google. It was Google internal technology that over years they experienced they were using the Borg, the technology called Borg, and they decided to make it open source. And the main reason was to reinforce their war for the cloud war and with AWS and other providers. And it worked well because now most of the cloud providers are providing Kubernetes as a service called AKS, EKS, GKE, and so on. And we are going to use, hopefully by the time, let us know that we will also bring the cluster in the GKE. And service discovery load balancer, and it's for orchestration of the application. And it has the components, it has a master control plane where you have API server, usually from your client kubectl, you talk to kube API server, and there is kube scheduler, which is responsible for scheduling and running them, the containers you have in one of the worker nodes. And etcd, it's using as a key value database for storing data. And yeah, that's the main parts you have to know. And controller manager, if application there is any crash or something, it will restart it for you. And in the worker nodes, in each one that it's running kubeproxy, and kubelet is responsible talking to API server and running all these the Docker containers in the worker nodes. And it can automatically scale, roll out, roll back. There is so much stuff Kubernetes can do for the cluster that you don't need anymore to wake up at 12 or 2 a.m. in the morning and do stuff, and it will do it for you. And service mesh. And service mesh is coming on top of Kubernetes. It's also came by IBM, Lyft, and Google, this technology. And I think Lee was yesterday in the talk, in the Measure talk, he was talking about it a bit. Actually, it's not that new. I started working in service mesh in 2017 when I joined Nginx. And that time we were thinking this technology gonna pick it up, but it didn't happen, to be honest. That's why we have now 20 different type of service meshes, plus Istio. Just we go for one only Kubernetes, but we have so many options for the service meshes because maybe the use cases was so many different and it was hard to cover all use cases. That's why people saw the opportunity and jumped to create another service mesh. Linkerd, Kong, all these big players, they also came up with service mesh technologies. But Istio is backed by Google, IBM, and Lyft, and probably one of the promising one, I would say. If you want to know about Istio, what it's doing, just keep this in mind. It's for intelligent routing, security, and observability. 3 things you need to know. So intelligent routing means before, if you need to change the route, you needed to go to the router and stuff to change it, but you can change in the application level with just command line. For example, if you have service 1 and service 2, service A and service B, you can basically using the Istio CTL command change route traffic from A to B. So as simple as that. Security means inside the cluster, you can have MTLS, mutual TLS, between the service application. For now, I will call it. I won't go to Kubernetes terminology, going pod and etc. And observability, and putting in front of each service as a proxy, you can push all the security related, observability related, all the logic inside these sidecar proxies, and these guys will do it for you. So you don't need to write extra library put inside the services. So yeah, and the Terraform is infrastructure as a code. It's help you basically to bring your cluster from scratch in a matter of minutes, and it's more descriptive code base you have for the infrastructure. So because usually in environments, they're mutable and there are so many things changing, and then if one of the machines crashes and stuff, you end up to bring it up, it takes a lot of effort. So Terraform helps you being multi-cloud. It means you can use it for AWS, you can use it for GCP, any cloud provider they support, and you can basically write as a code all your infrastructure, and whatever happens, you can always go and move to another cloud provider, and with less effort, you can just move your cluster to any place you want. And yeah, it's reproducible infrastructure basically. And it's good for disaster recovery as well. Infrastructure and Helm helps you deploy your application, and deploying your, usually you have your containers, and then you have some configuration on top of it. So using the Helm, you can deploy to the Kubernetes cluster your application, which is we are also using. Yeah. Nginx is one of the great pieces, and I think you have to also check the Elvin Effendi yesterday's session 5 about it. He was talking about how to contribute to Ingress Controller, the community version. There is 2 versions actually, one from Nginx, one from the community. I think the widely used one is Ingress Controller. It's helping you putting in front of your cluster. It's responsible for north-south traffic, inbound, outbound traffic, basically whatever. It's acting as a gate. It's doing automatically reconfiguring Nginx based on if there is any new pods and new service come up. So it's really good for the SSL, TLS termination, traffic splitting, and so on. It's load balancing, and yeah, one of the key.
Shako.
Yep.
There are some questions in meeting minutes. Can you please reply?
Just let me open. Okay. 1 second.
If you want, I can read it for you.
Yeah, let me quickly finish it. We are almost done, and then let's move. And I'm going to go for the demo. Okay, please keep writing. And yeah, security, it's briefly talking about the security. It's there are 3 pieces for the security: infrastructure, data, and application security. And infrastructure is shared responsibility model if you're using the cloud provider. And there are some pieces you are responsible, some pieces are AWS responsible. So it doesn't mean if you are in the cloud, basically you are secure. You still have to do some security related work, and it's continuous. It's not just I am done for today. It's like the house, over time it becomes dusty. So security is a continuous practice. And once you are leveling up, it means the other side, about some other bad guys also getting level up, so you have to really keep it up. Briefly about it. And data security, user controls privacy, but companies have to ensure protection. So user is in charge for their data. They can anytime delete, update whatever their data, but if you're storing data, especially if you're cloud provider, if you're running in cloud and your SaaS application, there are so much data you have to make sure, agree with customer, the data retention, data propagation, if you want to copy the data to another system or to another vendor, etc. So make sure all you do the homework, because it really can be a bigger pain and it's bad for the reputation of the company. So data protection, data privacy is must. And all of these about also staff training. So it's not about only security guy sitting and making sure that all the infrastructure data are secure. So you have to, all the developers at some level and all the data platform team, they have to have this security training. And last piece, application security, it's obviously about the developer security, it's DevSecOps. And it's also a continuous journey, and it should be part of the development lifecycle, because if you don't if there is any manual need, imagine you are deploying the code 40 times. There are companies shipping the code 40 times a day, and it will be the blocker for the releases. So it should be part of CI/CD. It should automatically find all the security breaches or some worst practices. It should check against your best practices, all the CVEs, and either it should block the release or it should just remediate all these issues automatically. So you cannot really, in this fast-paced DevOps mode, just try to put some manual security guy for each release going to production. That's the main key message here I wanted to say. And the last thing is, I think the measuring that Lee was talking yesterday, I won't talk too much. It's benchmark. And if you get time, I will show in also part of the demo for the service mesh. It's benchmarking. You just do endpoint performance testing. There is Fortio from Istio or WRK2 you can use, which is two most widely used for performance testing. And yeah, if all pieces we put together, that's gonna be something like that. And I will try not CI/CD Spinnaker part. I will try to some other parts to show in the demo in action. And after I move to questions, so let's go to questions first, and then let me. Okay. What scripting language and build tools are you using? Do you use Groovy DSL for Jenkins? Yes, we use a Groovy for the Jenkins. We have the complex pipeline and developer experience guys using the Groovy for that. But I am also, because GitHub Action is also becoming popular, if I start my own project, I will start with GitHub Actions. I think it's worth to check it. And yeah, do you use Kubernetes in the cloud or on-prem? If you use on cloud, if on-premise, what's the running on top of it? I don't have on-prem running experience with that, but I think any virtual machines, anything should work fine, because Kubernetes is it doesn't matter. It's hardware agnostic. So as long as you can run these binaries, the components of the Kubernetes, and as long as there is network level for connected these machines, you should be good. There should be physical connection. They should be able to ping each other, and then you will bring as a worker nodes. That's what also AWS, GCP, all these cloud provider has. They manage for you, abstract the master layer, master control layer, and you have the worker nodes, which is normal EC2 instances, which they just can ping each other, and that's it. How do you handle autoscaling in case of huge load? Do you use Kubernetes operators? For autoscaling, so there is a couple of scaling things. I think one is horizontal autoscaling, one is vertical autoscaling, and we have the cluster autoscaling. Cluster autoscaling, that means, actually I'm gonna also show in the Terraform that, so the number of worker nodes in Kubernetes, you define the minimum number, maximum number, and desired number. So based on the load, it will go up and down, the number of worker nodes. And then you can also do for the application itself, and using them, I think HBA is not now mature, but vertical means you can increase the number of replicas of application. So currently, if there is 2 replicas of your application, and it can go to 5 and it can come to 1. And there is another piece also called Kube Downscaler project, which is doing, for example, you can write the schedule to run the application only during Monday to Friday. Let's say you have some development cluster. You can write that your application will automatically, based on the time zone, will come up every morning at 8 a.m. and will go down by 8 p.m. So you have this kind of scaling option. So you have cluster autoscaler, you have scheduled like scaling, and you have HPA, horizontal. Horizontal means it's gonna keep the pod, but it will increase its memory and CPU requirements. That's HPA. And VPA, vertical autoscaling, means it will increase the number of replicas. So yeah, there are, but we don't use any Kubernetes operator for that. Does it good? Sounds good for you? Yeah. Do you use Istio for circuit breaking? Did you run into issue with any applications that start to fall in after applying Istio injection? Any performance problems? So to be honest, at this point of time, we don't use Istio in the production. So I don't have production experience for the circuit breaking and but injection Istio, I think, do you mean the injection, putting the sidecar in front of application?
Yeah, actually, after enabling injection in our in namespace, we started to have failures in some pods. Especially Keycloak gave me a very hard time. So I
sidecar injection.
Yes,
you
yes.
Mean, so to be honest, before when I was in Nginx, it's the previous version. I was the one we were running in production. We didn't have because it was kind of application agnostic. So you were getting some failures after adding that. What was exactly?
Yeah, actually, they mean it's application agnostic, but in reality, after applying it, I had a really hard time with some of the pods. Like I had to spend about a month to figure out the issue with Keycloak, and we had to change some of the technologies that we were using because of it.
So.
So what was really happening is the application starts and the Istio sidecar does not see it as healthy, and it starts to keep restarting itself for endless loop. I wonder if what else did you encounter if with some other?
So readiness probe was failing. Maybe you could increase the readiness probe because it was taking too much time to come up, or?
No, it's actually it was up, but the Istio
liveness probe was failing.
Yeah, sidecar liveness probe was failing.
For the sidecar or for the Keycloak?
For the Keycloak. The Keycloak was up, but the sidecar for some reason was reporting it as not healthy. So.
Yeah, I think need to a bit closer look for the stability. But in general, even like in the Measure project, when there was doing some performance, it was saying that even like bringing the Istio helps in to get some more. It become more performant because of the way the routing handled in Kubernetes and the way it handled bringing the Istio. But yeah, it's really depend on the case by case. But in general.
Yeah, I was asking because they also say it's application agnostic, and you assume that you will apply it and all the pods should still running as before, but in reality, I had some issues like this.
Yeah, there might be few things failing. So when Istio injects a sidecar container, it also has to change the IP tables on the host so that the packets from your apps container always go through the Envoy proxy that Istio injects. So it might be that your app starts before the Envoy container is ready, or there might be a race between the containers starting and IP tables change being applied. So I guess, yeah, as you said, case by case needs to be inspected.
Yeah, we definitely kind of close look if you want. Yeah, we can pair up for it. And I think Elvin, you and me.
Okay, we can take it offline.
Yes, yeah.
Now,
I think it's also interesting for me, just curious to see, because to be honest, usually whenever we were using it during Nginx, it was kind of fine. Obviously there were coming issue, but eventually we could either tuning or something, and we could kind of.
I would be happy to pair on that too. Yeah. I have my concerns with injecting sidecars. I don't like it, but yeah.
Yeah, but at the moment, if you ask me, in kind of my company OpenGov, it was earlier we wanted to bring, but then we didn't see enough value to bring. So it's still till that point, like since I joined 2018, like 20, it's still on the table. So yeah. Do you have any security penetration test as part of the CI/CD pipeline? Currently, we don't have, but I would say there is security tooling from the AWS that I would advise for using. So, for example, AWS Inspector you can use for host vulnerability management, and then there is. We are mainly using the SaaS products, and I would say Threat Stack, one of the tools, Threat Stack. It's when your application is running and it's taking the CloudTrail logs and it's running agent on your cluster and it's reporting some vulnerability. But again, penetration test is done by third party, but we have the different tooling in different steps running and for alerting mechanism. And we have some logging setups through the Sumo Logic application, I will say. And then we have internally developed T-scanner tool, which is for the security of the Docker containers dependencies of the application. So we have container vulnerability management, we have host vulnerability management, and then we have for runtime vulnerability detection alerting. So like IDC solution. So, but yeah, that's the tooling we use for the security. And penetration testing is usually it's done by quarterly, application by application case. And then there is another thing for penetration, bug bounty, that we are kind of also starting using that one too. Can you tell more about logging mechanism as approach for transferring log message to central logging system? So again, as I said, because of the team size, we are using mainly the SaaS product, and the Sumo Logic is we are using for it. So basically, Sumo Logic and Datadog is for metrics, but Sumo Logic is the kind of you define the endpoint and what it's doing, it's the application will send all the logging to that public endpoint. So, and you have the API key and you define, and we don't have the central logging system. As I understood, you mean something on-prem developed, and I will say ELK Stash is one of the famous. Yeah. I think pretty much probably Sumo Logic also they are using in their backend Elasticsearch and Greylog. Yes, I used. It's great and it's open source. I definitely would go with also Greylog. I had great experience with Greylog. I used it in my project in Germany and also in Nginx a bit, and it was amazing. But yeah. Yeah, I think the question coming another, what about logging and gateway? So what about login and gateway? What do you mean about the gateway? Login I understood, but the gateway, what do you mean exactly? What? Okay. So we use ingress controller in Nginx. We don't use the conch. Yeah, Nginx ingress controller is doing its job, and it's as a gateway. And for the logging, SSO is one of the I would advise go and use something like Okta or something and centralized logging, which is you can use either SAML or you can use OIDC on top of OAuth authentication. OAuth is authorization mechanism where you don't identify the people, but it's more authorization and what you can do. And then to identify on top of that is OIDC. That's which is Google's sign-in, Gmail, and all this stuff include there. And make sure you're enabling 2FA for whatever logging mechanism using, especially nowadays. And yeah, that in Nginx ingress controller, I think Elvin talked about yesterday, and as a core maintainer, and I would be happy also if you ask in the community challenge Slack, and we can, if you have more other concern and questions about it. Yeah, that should be it for the questions. I wanted to show you the cluster. Wait, are we good for the questions? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we are good. So I wanted to show something on, okay, let me show you guys. So I think you can see my, do we have timing? Nabi, how we are doing this timing?
I think we are late. We are getting
late?
late.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna just show you guys quickly. Sorry about that. So I'm gonna push it also to the GitHub, and hopefully, and I have some, some stuff going, and I was thinking also to do some kind of reference architecture for the DevOps, all the practices and stuff, and hopefully I'm gonna just also put in on the GoUp for the DevOps. So basically, here in the Terraform, it's infrastructure as a Terraform. So I brought this the cluster I brought using Terraform GK cluster, and let me go. Yeah. So basically, what you do, Terraform init, and then you do Terraform plan. I'm not going to destroy the cluster, but I will just tell you that. Yeah. And then you usually do Terraform apply or Terraform destroy. And what's going to happen? For example, I brought the KissConf cluster size. If you ask for the resizing, it started with a node size 1, but then you see it's not, the node size is 4 currently. And all this came with the Terraform. In simply, we use the GK Terraform module, and you can see here, Terraform 12 is the latest one using, and the number of minimum node was 1 and maximum node was 5. And then because of I deployed Istio and all these reference application, it starts scaling to 5, to the 4. So that's pretty much Terraform. So basically make sure in the under Terraform, you have the environments and you have integration production, and then you have the based on cloud provider you use, account, region. So to make it all clean, and then the modules put in the different subfolder that you can reuse for different environments. For example, we have GK cluster and GK service account. And that's for the Terraform, and it's gonna bring the cluster up as I showed you. And then for the Meshery, there was generate kubeconfig. It's gonna generate the kubeconfig, and if we see here, kubectl fonts minus istio system. So we have Istio system. So we can see Istio is deployed, and if you go to istio.io, you will be able to see, 1 second. So I think I'm gonna put the references, and istio.io, if you go here, it's super simple how to deploy. And there is also Meshery. If you go Meshery layer 5 documentation, let me open here. I think I put here. So for the GK, that was the one from the GK, for example, that was the script to generate config file once you brought the cluster up, and then you're gonna come here and Meshery start, Meshery CTL start. So basically, I'm just gonna show you why, yeah, the Meshery makes it so easy to deploy automatically Istio and the reference application. And 1 second, So you can see here, once you generate that config file using this doc, you can upload to the cluster, and then you can do any kind of performance testing. And Istio, you can see you can deploy sample application, and you can deploy Istio also through here, and or the command line. And yeah, that's for the Terraform. And for your application, so it will be under Terraform and the infrastructure. For your application, I would say use the Helm for the deploying. And once you brought your cluster, you can come and Helm ls. As you can see, Istio Bookinfo, it's we deployed kubectl get pods. So as you can see, it's running currently. All the microservices. Bookinfo, it's Istio sample application microservice, and you can. What we can do, and if you go to Istio, let's go to Istio documentation. One last thing I'm gonna show you guys, getting started, for example. If you come here, it's super simple, and you just follow the steps. Curl for installation. As I said, you can install through the measure, or you can follow just this sample guide and install the Bookinfo application. And once you installed, let's say for the outside traffic, we're gonna go here, for example, if you want to see, because Istio is using by default Envoy as a ingress gateway. It's not using Nginx. So as you can see, we see the IP address, and we come here, product page. Yeah, I think you see like application is running, and I'm just gonna do final performance test here. You come, so it's gonna run basically the tests for the application, and the application came via Helm. Infrastructure, the cluster came with a Terraform, and anytime it will take me a couple of minutes to destroy the cluster and delete the application, and all will be clean, and I can go and recreate again and again. And usually we'll have another cluster where we have Jenkins and Spinnaker running, and once we have the CI/CD, it will automatically go through the CI/CD and they deploy the application here. Yeah. I briefly talking is that, so sorry about for lack of the time for the demo, but over the coming days, please follow in the community channel. I'm gonna push for DevOps. As I said, I'm thinking for the DevOps some kind of also reference architecture that we are using, and from the open source, if it's paid, more open source tooling, putting the best practices, because I have also a friend asking me for that, and anyway, I'm gonna do it. So hopefully I can do it open source, and it will be like guides, and you can follow and just do yourself. Or if I get some time, we can do as a workshop too sometime. And yeah, that should be it. Any other questions? If not, okay. Okay, we still have some time, some people. I'm gonna give the floor to our sponsor and hero guys, Jumshid and Nurlan, who are gonna talk about, again, open source and SaaS. And this time they're gonna talk about more the technical aspect of it. Yeah, I'm gonna let me stop it.